as you all are aware, I mean, the financial sector is the most attacked sector from any of the other industries. It has 65% more attacks than any other sector. The good part is it's not the most breached sector. It comes 3 in that list. The fact is there are millions of dollars at stake, and this sector has the biggest impact if breached. Not only monetary, but also the reputation of the banks are at stake. And I think this is the topic that we're going to discuss today over the next 35 minutes with our panelists. So Talat, from an awareness perspective, right, from cybersecurity, is there enough awareness? When I say is there enough awareness, is there enough awareness in the customers, with our employees, with the C-level, with the boards of these financial institutions?
I believe yet we're not at the 100% sort of awareness level that we're looking for. However, for that reason, the Saudi banks have formed a special committee emerging from the chairman committee of all Saudi banks, is basically to take care of that awareness issue, because we have worries that technology with the speed rate, every day you have a technology coming, technology yesterday obsolete, and so on and so forth, and the complexity, of course, of such technology sometimes. At the same time, you need to raise the level of awareness at our customer at the same level of that technology. Yes, it is improved, very much improved, but I think in the Middle East countries in general, and probably the GCC and probably Saudi Arabia in particular, we have a problem with the trust issue. When you over-trust people in financial matter, this is where you could fall into being a victim of a fraud of any kind. Giving your card to somebody that you know or you don't know, or divulging your PIN number, for example, and somebody knows your PIN number, or using, and this is what we're really faced with, some of PIN number easy to be replicated, like, sequential numbers or repeated numbers, 111, whatever. So I think this is the issue that we're trying hard to raise in the level of mind, that trust is something, but financial issues and trust in financial issues, there is a limit to it. However, I think SAMA, with the Saudi Monetary Authority, and also MEDA in that regard and others, they're taking security issue like a red line, that all banks has to be in full compliance with the security aspect, all of the channels, electronic channels. Anyway, any electronic channel that would come on board from a bank, it has to be really approved from the related concerned department with SAMA. But more important is the awareness part of it. Each and every bank has its own shop, really, that's, take care of his customer. Now, my committee, on behalf of the Saudi banks, i.e. all customer of all banks, or even the potential customer. But yet, despite the fact we are using what we call the 360 degrees awareness, we use, you name it, the social media, the YouTube, the SMS, whatever, and others. And we have a national campaign, by the way, every year we have it, is to educate customer on the best usage and optimum usage of the different electronic channel, and how to avoid to be victim to a fraud. But yet, are we 100% there? No, of course we're not, but every day we are improved as far as the level of awareness. You would tell me how it has been measured. Do you measure it yourself? No. We bring third party who's has a neutral position, that runs on whatever we do, and he comes with a percentage. So every year we find the percentage increase. But the challenge is still that you have newcomers. Exactly. So you educate people now, but newcomers will come into the play. Perfect. So it is very challenging, but yet we're still coping with it. And with also the security measure that we have, the most international practices that we do have, like SMS notification, we have the two-factor authentication, we have the PCI DSS measures, we have the EMV measure. All of that collectively, I think it's helping to secure, to a certain extent, our environment.
Perfect. Thank you. I mean, I think that's very important, the creation of the awareness within the larger ecosystem, especially from a cybersecurity perspective. So Partha, now most of these banks are embracing digital transformation. embracing new technologies. But at the same time, this very thing is introducing more vulnerabilities in the system, right? So how are financial institutions dealing with these challenges?
See, if you look at most of the compromises or the hacking happening across, it is not that it is something which is happening out of the world. Most of the things are weaknesses which are known long time back. The organization has not put in place the basic of security, being the good practices of patching, good practices of vulnerability assessment and closure. And going back to the basic is the most important thing rather than anything else. Have you got your basic patching, your versions, your upgradation, your weaknesses, periodic reviews? These are the things which will help you to get the thing. Because the reason is, we are only increasing the touch points, but the core systems are still in the most conventional manner. Okay? So what happens across is, how far is your internal environment aligned with the best practices? And continuously benchmarking it. It is not a point of time achievement. The question is, everybody has to look back and ask, what is the gap between a patch announcement and patching completed? The basic, I'm talking about the basic.
Okay. So I think what you said is, if you get the basics right, the basic people, process, technology in place, you will be able to manage this new transformation journey.
Yes.
Raju, what's your view on this?
No, so I would like to touch upon both the points. In fact, awareness, you made good points. See, the challenge is, while general awareness has definitely increased, but the fact also is for them, and when I say them, that's cyber criminals, 1 out of 100 is a success, and for us to be successful, 100 out of 100 times we need to defend. So the challenge is never ending, and it's a one-sided game, right? Now, if you look at the entire ecosystem is far bigger. Let's look within the organization. Okay, when we talk about awareness, who are the stakeholders from senior management down to, if in a banking organization, say a teller, the stack, the employee stack and the profiles are too huge. I mean, awareness is constantly ongoing. I mean, let's ask ourselves, and there might be many HR professionals here, do we even talk about cybersecurity during induction? See, the awareness begins there. Why? Because cybersecurity is not part of our DNA. Digitization and use of it is very natural human instinct, and we see even an infant knows how to touch a screen. But this is a acquired skill, and that is not part of our curriculum. So at least as business organizations, can we begin that awareness maybe once the employee steps in, and that's not once and ongoing. And touching upon the point on preparedness of financial institutions is a never-ending story, and it's important what defense framework do we have, okay? We heard technology aspect of it. We as city, I mean, having the network across 100+ countries and our experience in dealing with hundreds of regulators and clients, we have come up with a framework, and this is not something which is out of the blue. This is best practice that has been derived from the industry, and it is a three-pronged strategy which talks about prevention, detection and response across people, process and technology, right? Now, when we talk about all the three, what we are saying is frauds are here to happen and they will still happen. But if you look at any anatomy of an attack, okay, and let's not be surprised if I were to draw a parallel to a standard SDLC process that we do in any product development, even a cyber attack has a process, okay? And if you look at anatomy, it begins with a requirement gathering, a reconnaissance across all this employee stack which I spoke about, senior management. They know exactly who are the people, profiles, what kind of information, what is the monetary value of that, what kind of credentials do they have, moving to systems and across the IT stack of the organization. That's the requirement. Then comes the analysis of it, coming up with a use case on what's the best way to attack them. Now, the other fact is that it's no longer the case where your vulnerability is found out and you are attacked. actually vulnerabilities can be created now, okay? And they too follow software development, or I would say malware development. Now, I can go on and on with anatomy, but if you put prevent, detect and respond across every step of this attack, okay, you are able to thwart it and stop this attack at some point of time. Some damage can happen in terms of an information loss, maybe not an exact amount loss, but you know, if you go through the full life cycle of a fraud, assuming the fraud has happened, okay, a point is what is your response mechanism to that, okay? And whenever a fraud were to happen in an organization, the loss is not just the short term and a business interruption, but there are long term impacts. So that is reputational and a long term technology recovery out of it. So prevention, detection and response touching people, process and technology, that is something that I think is a very formidable framework.
Absolutely, I think you're right. I mean, you are just a hack away from a breach, and breach is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think, you know, how am I going to respond to that? And I think me and Samir were talking before the session, and you know, that what is our response mechanism? Are those things documented from a process-wise, technology-wise? That's critical, right? And Samir, what's your view? Because you were very passionately speaking about, you know, the response mechanism and the process of responding to a breach which has already happened.
So I think I'll add on to I'll pick up the threads from where both of my peers have left. On security awareness, I'll start with that and I'll come on to that question. I'll take on that. While security awareness is an issue which is more relating to an ecosystem, and it is not something which is relating to banking industry alone. The issue is much wider and applicable to the entire society. All along, the practices of security have been into the human societies. But then we have now seen that there are digital societies which have evolved over the last couple of decades. Now, there have been some practices which have been existing in the human societies. There's something called digital societies. We have been practicing security from the grassroots levels right from the day we are born. Our parents handhold us, they instill that what to do, what is good, what is not for you, how you're going to get hurt, how do you need to secure yourself from physical harm, so on and so forth, or maybe from diseases that you may get acquired and stuff. If in the digital space, if we need to tackle the issue of security awareness, everybody has a responsibility to play there. It has to start from the grassroots levels. The day your child creates his first digital identity, I think it's moral responsibility of each one of us as an internet citizen, right, to make sure that our next generation who gets onboarded into this, one, they understand the concept of security. Second, they're able to practice it. And thirdly, they're able to comprehend and follow it through in terms of further evolving and not into their practice, but I would say into the culture. So that is the security awareness part of it. The second part, that the question that I would like to add on to is on security vulnerabilities side of things. The vulnerabilities are there. They will continue to evolve. Thing is, as my peer has already also touched upon, that you need to have mechanisms of prevention, detection, response and all. Response being, largely if you see, there have been organizations who have invested multi-million dollars into their security programs towards preventing an attack, preventing a breach into the organization, into the network, into their digital assets, so on and so forth. But yet, those organizations have been breached. The fact being, there is an attacker or there is an adversary who's motivated enough and who's identified you as a target. So your preventive controls are not good enough. But at the same time, can you do away with them is also a question which is nobody else on this panel at least would say that, okay, we don't need to have our antiviruses, we don't need to have a security infrastructure. They still need to be there. They are the foundation of any security control framework. However, the shift that we are looking at is now, those things, the threats are going to bypass. They're going to get into your network. All of us, we know how. Most of our, I'll cite a simple example like, I'm on LinkedIn, my profile is out there. Equally the same information about me is already available on that social media, right? It's very easy to anybody across the world pick me up as a target, send me a well-crafted email, which the signatures or the updates or the preventive mechanisms are not there at all, it will get delivered. Me as a security professional many a times may also get fooled by such well-crafted spear phishing emails, so-called. So with a simple thing, somebody who's motivated, who's selected you, picked you up as a target, he will get through to you because of your digital identity and your presence across the network, unless you yourself are immune to it in a way that you don't participate in the digital society at all, which is something that either you be in or you're left out. If that be the case, I know I have to carry a mentality of assume breached. Means I am breached already. The question is, how do I detect that I am breached? And then once I detect that I am breached, how do I respond to it? So the complete shift in the thought process has been from prevention to detection and response part of it. And that is how the concept of information security as a practice domain has shifted we see a shift from cyber security to more cyber or information security to cyber security and cyber resiliency side of things. So that's what I'd say all the organizations, be it the regulations which are now, which are coming up across the globe, be it specific to banks or any other industries, are relating to cyber security. Primarily, you'll see the ask is twofold. One, what are your detection capabilities and what are your response capabilities? So these two things are very important and play a very crucial in your information or cybersecurity program within an organization.
Yeah, but I get this point, but with the technology evolving so fast and new technologies getting introduced and being adopted by the financial sector, for example, blockchain, right, or artificial intelligence, this is creating new use cases in the industry, right? As the Chief Information Security Officer, do you lose sleep over this? How do you prepare yourself to for these new things that are coming in?
No, definitely an important question for us as businesses. So, look, we all agree that the only way to scale is digitization, and that is the only way to reach newer markets, newer customers, build new business models, and that's how the growth will come. We cannot imagine going back to pen and paper and doing transactions, and technology has to come in. The touch points will increase, as he said, and this is a natural way of progression and looking forward. Cybersecurity landscape is evolving constantly. We spoke about most of the mechanisms. Now, the other paradigm shift that we see, I can tell you from experience in last 2 years, we used to have conversations with multinational clients. We're talking about who owns the cybersecurity in your organization. So very likely the answer would be it's an IT issue, okay, and that was a mindset which definitely we have crossed over, and not just into banking but across industry. It is not just an IT issue, okay. This is a risk which a treasurer or a CFO needs to manage like many other risks that are being managed, okay. And when I say manage and risk management, we know that no risk can be eliminated, it can only be reduced and minimized, and only when it becomes manageable, okay, then it becomes part of doing the business, okay. When I say part of doing that business, doesn't mean that the brand and the organization that we have built over decades and centuries, one attack can bring us down. Obviously, this framework is definitely required, and on the response part, which was another important question, and do organizations have a documented response mechanism? A good parallel to draw is an emergency on an airplane. Can we imagine, do you think that pilot is something who will figure out what to do at that time, or he has an SOS to follow? So there is a playbook, definitely, that I have to do XYZ things, and nothing doing, no thinking, you have to follow a process. So the response part is so important in case of cybersecurity that every single employee in an organization needs to know who to contact, what to do. As simple as these things are not documented, where to reach out, okay? Where to reach out on the bank side. From a banking perspective, I can give you a simple example, and you would all agree that when a fraud is reported, for us to leverage our correspondent banking networks and partners, it's possible to recall funds, and in most cases, if the fraud is reported in less than 24 hours, the probability of recovery is 80 to 90%. Beyond 24 hours, your chances goes down to 0. Fair. So, how important is the response and how documented, well documented it is, that is very important. So, and on the prevention part in technology, another parallel I can draw is, and I don't know if most of us from subcontinent, I love cricket. Technology and these processes are like headgears. My favorite batsman will wear a headgear. The upcoming bouncer, okay, what is the best mechanism to prevent it is to duck, not to take it heads on. Okay, now when I say duck, ducking is actually awareness. Okay, when you are aware, that's where you will duck it. That's a better way to prevent rather than taking it heads on, right?
Absolutely. Talat, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to have two comments. In fact, what I have heard is, one is prevention. And I think prevention, as they say in Arabic, al-wuqaya khayrun min al-ilaj. I think prevention is the most important of all of the chain before you go to the deduction and to the support or whatever. So prevention in Saudi banks, for example, we have what we call stress test, which we around the clock do some stress test to our system just to ensure there is no any kind of danger or risk that somebody could go and hack our system. So I agree with you 100%. Making things difficult for whoever to penetrate the system, I think that's an important prevention. I also like what have been said by my colleague is shared responsibility. You cannot always blame a financial organization, whether in a monetary format or in a moral issue, when the client himself really does not apply to the rules, does not comply with the instructions of the bank. End of the day, when a client goes or gives somebody else his credit card or his ATM card, and he walks into an ATM machine and he abuses that ATM machine with that card, I don't think the bank here is responsible, financial institution, because I think our customer has made a breach for the process and for the PIN number, if you will, for the card, giving the card to somebody else. So I think we should build some sort of culture that, what have been said, shared responsibility. We're responsible indeed to protect our systems, but also in turn, you as a customer or you as a client has a responsibility towards this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Talat. The next thing is the introduction of biometrics to the bank. It's happening. Right? We're now using it. Many banks have already started. Now, this introduces a new level of complexity. Right? And Partha, how is the sector planning to deal with this?
See, actually, if you see across, biometrics is the highest form of authentication you can do about it. Okay. So if you see today, slowly everybody is moving towards biometric as a mode of authentication to the banking system, especially when you are having high-value transactions, people prefer a biometric rather than a two-factor authentication. Okay. However, what happens across is, I always tell that the security of any transaction is as strong as the endpoint. The problem is the other end of the tunnel is being handled by the institutions which are very heavily protected. But the endpoint through which you are communicating with the banking systems need not be with the same amount of controls. As somebody was asking me before I came in, how many users think that you require to deploy an antivirus in an Android mobile phone? Today, all of us know very well, if I have a Windows laptop, I would prefer to have an antivirus purchased or open source installed and being monitored and also updated for the latest signature. Now, if you ask me as far as biometric is concerned, the challenges will start coming in once it becomes commoditized. As of now, the threat levels are not so high because not many banks have moved into the biometric mode of authentication. As the numbers keeps on increasing, the hackers on the other side will start thinking one step ahead to say that, where can I have a weakness? Where can I identify a weakness? It is a new area. We have to wait and watch how it is evolving. 100% I'll tell you, there will be 2-3 smart guys under the world who will think a way to circumvent it. For example, if you see across the Apple's Touch, which was supposed to be a very thing which came across, there are chances of it compromised very easily, okay, because of certain problems in the algorithm in which the hashes are being created across. So the question, what happens is, Biometric is another one level of deterrence for the person. That's all. If you see today, what we are doing is a defense in depth. We are creating as many hurdles as possible for a potential intruder, and we are disincentivizing him to say that you're going to spend more time, more efforts to break in. So you don't look at it. You look at somebody who is a low-hanging fruit, go and hack him, take your money, and go away. That's what every one of us is trying across.
So, Samir, your views?
Yeah, so I think two things. If you look at specifically talking about biometrics, it has come a long way now. It's been more technically matured as a technology. You can see on smartphones, it is readily available. As a practitioner of security, yes, I look at it as an opportunity that I can leverage upon in terms of strengthening certain controls here. But if you ask me, as a cyber security or a security professional, Samir, would you want to apply this as a control or use this as a technology uniformly or consistently across the breadth and the width of your environment? So the answer is, there are some practice principles that you typically follow. The question again boils down to, what are you trying to protect? What is the cost of your protection or the cost of your control? It has to strike a balance somewhere. It cannot happen that you have an asset whose value is about 100 dirhams here, lying here, and you put 200 dirhams worth control to protect it. So hence, with that principle, we should be in a position to perceive and assess the value of the service, be it asset, be it service, be it information, or some of them are very easily measurable in dollar value. Some of them are hard to assess, as one of my peers before we started off the discussion was talking about the reputational risk side of things, the softer side of things, of course. Then you have to have a scientific approach of implementing or selecting your controls that need to be adopted across your organization. So yes, to answer your question, biometrics indeed is one of the technologies which should potentially be seen as we can leverage upon, especially some of the regulations like SWIFT CSP has already mandated two-factor authentication. May not be, you may want to choose biometrics or whatever other form factor you want to see. But equally, I think some of the, for example, if you want to go with your customer population and you want to start using at people who already have Samsung phones, Android phones, or your iPhones which has the biometric feature already enabled, then can you apply it uniformly across? You will not be able to serve your customer. You need to pick up where you need to put this. Important thing is, as my previous panel discussed about segmenting the customer based on the profile, nature. So you will have to start looking at segmenting your internal customers and your external customers, have the ability to profile them, and then select the controls, be it biometric for specific user segments. That is a rational approach towards security.
I have small comments.
Yeah,
If you,
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. Security could go as far as sky limit. But the more that you put security, the more that you lose flexibility. And in fact, it would dilute, in my humble opinion, from our customer, what we hear them, the speed and responsiveness and all of that. You can put measures as much as you can. But the thing you have to balance between the measures that you put with you will not dilute, in fact, the benefits of the electronic channel, the speed and so on and so forth. One of the things also, because 50% of me is media, I think financial institutions, we have responsibility towards media, is to give them all the knowledge and education about security and about cyber and about others, for them to transfer and transport, in fact, to the public. So I think we have responsibility toward the media to educate them with the update or with the knowledge so they can really convey it, if you will, to the public.
So I think when you guys go to your boards, right, asking for more investments, because the board's more concerned about the financial well-being and reputation, are they recognizing this as a potential investment area, a potential impact on their brand, on their financial performance? Is this space getting the required investments that it warrants? And I'll combine two questions since we're running out of time. Is the Chief Information Security Officer, should he be from a business domain? Should he understand business, or he should be more technocratic than this?
No, so let's start from the board, as you said, that, and we touched upon this point that businesses are recognizing this as a risk, and this is something which does not require a discussion. It is a risk that we need to manage. So that shift has happened where it's not that the board agenda is just the growth and business focused. I mean, cybersecurity is now the boardroom agenda. Okay, this is a fact. Now, the problem also is that what is the understanding level of a senior business executive when it comes to cybersecurity? What kind of flexibility does he provide to his information officer? Now, again, from my experience and what I understand, a very natural tendency of a CEO would be, look, there's a board pressure obviously, and cyber is on top of his mind that he is having sleepless nights, okay? So his only thing to the security officer is, how much are we investing? His only benchmark is, my competition investment into security is so much, why are you spending less? He might be having a great security officer who might be putting a great framework and taking care of all of these things. And like we spoke about biometric and you spoke about endpoint security, I'm saying all of this can be bypassed. What if there is a backdoor entry to the application? So how does biometric help? So business will not have a complete understanding of how an end-to-end technology will work, including the product and the process, and it would not be a right approach to just put a number to or an investment to a security parameter of the organization. And that's where we need to give complete flexibility to the security officer. But the fact also is, now the CISO cannot be just technologically oriented. He needs complete business and the process understanding. That's where a perfect match and the security will arise.
Thanks, Raju. I think we'll take a couple of questions from the audience now. I think we have about 5 minutes for that.
So we have about 2 minutes, if you would like. Time goes when you're having fun, gentlemen. We're going to go to our audience, and if we can have your name, your company, and your question.
Thank you. Patrick Moyner from the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority. Just in relation to the last answer, I'm reminded of a little story of two guys walking in the jungle. When one of them spots a lion, or a tiger rather, they turn to run away, and one guy says to the other, it's no point, we can't outrun the tiger, and the other says, well, I only have to outrun you.
Faster than you.
So in that context, gentlemen, what is the benchmark that's used in terms of assessing the appropriate investment in defense? Is it some algorithm or some particular assessment of the threat level, or is it just be one step ahead of the peer banks so that they become the target rather than you?
See, I would say this way. Everybody has a different question paper. There's no use in you looking upon other person to say that I will just try to copy what he is doing. Most of the security is inward oriented. I always compare security to the body mechanism. Okay? Everybody's body is different. Everybody's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities are different. You have to understand yourself to say that, what am I doing myself to keep my white blood corpuscles in good position so that it can handle unknown viruses. So there is no one single short answer to say that this is what I will do. No. The best thing is, the very famous Art of War of the Chinese book. If you know yourself well and the enemy well, you can fight without losing. You cannot win. There is nothing like assured winning. So the question is, the organization has to conduct its risk assessment, understand the threats, understand its weaknesses in terms of people, process, and technology. Today, many of the cyber criminals are trying to take advantages of the handoff between the process and the technology, and they're beautifully doing a surgical operation to take out the money. So it is not only technology alone. The person requires to know the business operation, the business handover between the technology and the process, and ensure that you build enough controls around it. That would be my answer.
And our final question to the gentleman here.
My name is Ismail Dawi. I'm from Red Hat. I have a question around open source. So how do you see the role of open source in enhancing the IT security in the financial sector? Thank you.
I think it's a strategy of every company. I think there is no silver bullet for it. Every institution handles its risk in a differential manner according to the risk appetite of the organization. The risk appetite of the organization is defined by the board, which flows down to the GCRO, to the individual departments to say how you want to handle it across. So, and I can tell you, every system has an advantage and disadvantage. So if you say I adopt a strategy A smart fellow will come back and there are 1,000 reasons why you must not adopt A. Okay? If you adopt B, somebody might come and tell across to say why you must not adopt B. So it depends upon your risk appetite and your organizational culture. That's the most important thing. I tell them security is more a culture than anything else. Your organizational culture matters.
Okay, I think with that we are out of time, and thanks to the panelists
Thank you.
for
Thank
a
you
good
very much.
discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.